get started here in just a second. Okay, welcome. Good morning. Again, happy National School Counseling Week. We have had a great week interviewing the different ISCA award recipients. It's been really fun. Monday, we talked to Erin Munson, who was our elementary school counselor award recipient. Tuesday, we talked to Karen Bowman, middle school award recipient. Yesterday, we talked to Lydia McNeely. She was the Trailblazer Award winner for ISCA. And then, of course, today, we are happy to talk to Connie Stevertson. She was the, correct me if this is incorrect, Connie, she was the 2020, right? 2020
yeah.
Counselor of the Year. And she actually received her award this past fall because the 2020 ISCA conference was virtual. Is that all accurate information there?
You nailed
Perfect. It. Okay. And then Julie Hill was the 2021 School Counselor of the Year award recipient and the High School Counselor of the Year. So she was a double award recipient this year. So excited to have you both join us. I think we're going to have a great conversation. I am going to, again, say thank you for all the work that you do, for all of you school counselors joining us today. Hopefully this week has been full of different opportunities for you to feel really good about the great work that you're doing in schools with students, and also a good opportunity for us to educate on the important role that school counselors play. So hopefully everybody's had a great week. And again, this is just kind of a fun way for us to highlight some of the work that's happening across Indiana. While we are just sharing and talking to the ISCA award recipients, we know that there is a lot of awesome work going on around the state. So thank you. So I'm going to first introduce myself. My name is Amanda Callahan. I am the Counselor Connect coordinator, and our coffee chats this week are hosted by Counselor Connect and the Indiana School Counselor Association. So thank you to ISCA for being a great collaborator on these sessions this week. Now I'm going to ask anybody to introduce themselves in the chat. So everybody who has joined us, if you want to go ahead and in the chat put maybe your name and your position or the school where you work or your level, just so we can kind of get a sense of who's with us today. Hi, Karen. Anybody else want to pop in their info there? That would be wonderful. And in the meantime, thank you, Molly. Okay. Counselor Ben Davis, great. Thanks for joining us. And people can keep adding as I know people may join, pop on, so we can ask again in a little bit for people to introduce themselves. So with that, I am going to ask Julie to start us off. And Julie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Julie Hill. I am a school counselor at Western Boone Junior Senior High. We are a small rural school between Indianapolis and Lafayette. I have been here this is 12 years for me here in this building. And prior to that, I was an elementary school counselor in our district for 7 years as well. So
great, thank you. And I always like to ask the question this week of what is your counselor to student ratio?
We are very fortunate in that we are pretty close to that 250 to 1. Our enrollment is always fluctuating like everyone else's. I find one of the challenges though in being in a very small school is that my caseload is a little bit smaller, but it means I have a larger number of kind of the auxiliary duties because I still have to coordinate PSAT and SAT and financial aid and all of those things where if we had a larger department, we could spread those things out a little bit more. So even at 250 to 1, I feel pretty stretched, but I also feel very blessed because I know that I am in a much better place than a lot of my colleagues around the state.
Great. That's helpful as we talk a little bit more. We get to your program and get to hear a little bit about those components. That's helpful to kind of have that, background. And then we'll get back to a little bit more about you, Julie, in a second. Connie, do you want to introduce yourself for us?
Sure, thank you. And thanks for inviting us to do this week. This is awesome. Thank you so much. I'm Connie Stevertson. I am a counselor at Lawrence North High School. We have 9 counselors in our building. I also serve as the department chair, so my load is a little bit decreased. I take all of the IB students and then a little sliver of the junior and senior alphabet. So I have 106 students along with my other duties. Our other counselors are all about 350 to 1. One of the benefits of coming from a big school, Lawrence North currently has a little over 2,800 students in grades 9 through 12, and that definitely provides some opportunities for people being able to kind of champion a certain program or project. We certainly do get pulled into a lot of different things, but it is nice to be able to pursue something of interest and share it out with the rest of the school, be the face or the champion of that program. Certainly a lot of different challenges. We are a really unique school district in that 3 years ago, we got a piece of data that I thought really fit well. We are a school that sits in the most affluent area of Indianapolis. And we also pull from one of the 3 top crime, and I don't mean top like woohoo, I mean highest crime rate areas in the city. So we have this really extensive diversity across the spectrum. Socioeconomically, we cover everything, and beautifully diverse school settings. So not rural in any way, shape, or form. We sit kind of between urban, suburban, and right on the northeast corner of Indianapolis.
Great. Thank you for that. Now, interestingly, you both come from very different districts. So it's nice to get, you guys are pulling from totally different perspectives with your current roles and with your population. So it'll be interesting to hear a little bit more about your program as we think about, like you said, the different needs. I'm sure a lot of shared needs, of course, but also there are a lot of differences between your two buildings. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go back in the slide real quick. Julie, do you want to share some of this? We'll start with kind of some personal information before we get into the counseling stuff.
Well, I think you'll see a flavor of the counselor is always there. I can never completely disconnect, but I am a 2-time graduate of Butler, so go Dogs. And I've also been serving as an adjunct professor in the school counseling program up at Indiana Wesleyan. So that's always been really important to me as well. I am married to a school counselor, so he is my ASCA souvenir. He was the president in Arizona the year that I was president of Indiana, and we were seated together at some leadership development. A large group of us became friends, and the next thing I know, I'm hauling him to Indiana to come and join ISCA and our team of counselors here.
Oh, that's great.
Probably most people know I served on the ASCA board of directors for I termed out after my 6 years, and I did 3 years as the chair of the board. Also was involved with ACTE, so got their Career Guidance Award a few years ago, and was able to work with ACTE a lot. So I really appreciate that partnership. Personal life, last summer we decided we were going to go hike the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. So we spent our anniversary having sunrise at Machu Picchu. It was a little cloudy, so we weren't quite there for sunrise, but we also got to just learn so much about the culture and education in Peru and some great things from our indigenous guides. So we loved that. I run, though I won't call myself a runner. So for our honeymoon, we ran a half marathon on the Great Ocean Road in Australia. And this year we had the opportunity, the Boston Marathon went virtual, and we said it may never happen again. So we're going to do this. And so we ran the Boston Marathon in October here in Indianapolis. The people on the canal saw us going around and around and around for a very long time. We started to recognize people. We gave lots of directions. So it was very fun there. And then family-wise, I have 2 kids. My son, Alex, is a soccer coach, fitness trainer. And my daughter, Melanie, is a couple of months away from finishing dental school. So she is pretty excited and ready for graduation. And then I became a new Grammy in July on my birthday. So I could look in those little eyes forever. So she is my sweetheart.
She is adorable. What a cute picture. Well, thank you for sharing that. Great to know a little bit about you on a kind of a more personal level. And then Connie, I'm going to kick it over to you. I'm going to update the slide here. And then if you want to share anything about your slide.
Okay, so true story. Julie and I are not connected, but you're going to hear things that make us sound like we are. I am a North Dakota native, born and raised, and earned a teaching degree from the University of North Dakota, which has the best hockey anywhere in the nation, and I will fight you over that if there's a disagreement. We moved to Arizona to teach school because jobs were really limited in education, because my husband is also a teacher, or he continues to be a teacher. And we moved to Arizona and lived there for 6 years. And when we had children, we wanted to go back to the Midwest, and we both landed in Lawrence Township and have been here since 1996. So I spent 20 years in middle school. And one of the things I always, kind of elbow people about, when I was in college, I said, I will do anything except middle school. No way, no how. And of course, that's where I spent 20 years. And I love middle school kids. The energy is incomparable. There is nothing like middle school. And as a matter of fact, I go to our feeder school tomorrow to do our enrollments for next year. And I can't wait. And I literally walk in the building and I start smiling, because you just feel it. It is there as soon as you walk in the door, and I love it. So I have been at Lawrence North since 2010. We had a school close in Lawrence Township, and that was the middle school I was in. Craig Middle School closed as part of restructuring when financial challenges with desegregation money leaving and a lot of other things that impacted the township, and they closed Craig Middle School, and I ended up coming here. So I said, if Peyton Manning can have his job transferred somewhere else, I can't be shocked that mine can also be. But it ended up being one of those awesome moves. I have absolutely loved being at Lawrence North, and really have enjoyed, in a way I did not even anticipate, how much I just love my high school kids. I love teenagers. I also taught as an adjunct at IUPUI for several years. So it's been really nice to have some of those students end up back in our building as practicum or intern students. And literally, we just hired a counselor who started with us because one of our counselors was promoted to an assistant principal position, or I shouldn't say promoted, was moved to an assistant principal position. And the counselor who replaced him was one of the students I had at IUPUI, and also did his practicum here with one of our other counselors, Sheila Patterson-Allen. So it's kind of fun to have, that full circle. As I said, my husband is a math teacher. He works at the sister school in the district, Lawrence Central. And we, for our 30th wedding anniversary, went to Tromsø, Norway, above the Arctic Circle, to take part in the Midnight Sun Marathon. There was no marathoning going on. It was a 10K. But it was just such an incredible opportunity. And it happened to be their 30th anniversary of the Midnight Sun Marathon as well. So we started that in 1989 together, and we were there in 2019 together. We have 3 children. We have a daughter who's an engineer in San Diego, just got married. That's her picture. She got married up at the Basilica at Notre Dame. We have a son who is currently working as an instructional assistant at one of our elementary schools. And then we have a daughter who's a junior in high school. So I've been able to ride through that class of 2023 with her. and all of the changes that come with that group. And then she's not with me right now, but we have a facility dog, Nugget, who is absolutely amazing. So she is in the picture on the screen, but she's not really down with sitting, looking at Zoom. So somebody else took her for the duration of our visit today. So she may pop back in before we're done.
Great. You are not lying. You do have a lot in common.
Yeah.
That is kind of strange, isn't it? Very ironic. Great. Thank you for sharing that. That church is gorgeous. You said that was up at Notre Dame?
Yeah.
So pretty.
That's the basilica there.
That's very pretty. Great. Okay. Well, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here then. Was there any other slides, information that you wanted to share? I think those were your only slides right there, right? Okay. So I'm going to pop back over here so I can see everybody and see the chat at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and ask some questions, but anybody on the call, if you have questions, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. If you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, that's totally fine too. This is very laid back, but if either one of them, as they talk a little bit about program components, if there's something you want to know more about, please feel free to ask. That's why we're here. So, okay, I'm going to start with my first question, which I know we got a little piece of this as you talked about your personal lives and kind of your steps through your journey. But my question really is, how did your journey as a school counselor begin, or what really inspired you to become a school counselor? So Julie, I'll start with you if that's okay.
Well, I tell people school counseling really found me. I was working in related fields and actually was an arts major for my undergraduate work. I was working in a theater, always involved with the arts. Started working with the education programming, but then I had also become really involved in my church and became our youth director because I loved working with young people. And through my time there, I found that I was leading them through their personal challenges as much as anything else. And so I decided that maybe that was what I was called to do. So went back to school to get my master's in school counseling, and that led me to where I am. And then I've just been blessed to have, great colleagues and mentors along the way that have really inspired me to take on different leadership roles.
Great, thank you. One of our other award recipients this week started in art education. So that's interesting. And I'd be curious to know how that's helped you in your school counseling world, in that position of that background in art. So that's a good connection between a couple of the award recipients. Connie, what about you? How did your journey begin? I keep saying begin, or what inspired you to get into this work?
My journey started a long time ago. I've been teaching school since I was in first grade. In my bedroom with a really cool, it was a birthday gift. It was like a 3x5 chalkboard that leaned against the radiator. And I had the most well-educated cat and stuffed animals that you can imagine. So it started a long time ago. I loved school. School was good to me. I felt successful and loved and appreciated. And it was just a great place for me. So I kind of knew going through high school that I wanted to continue on and be a teacher. And that's exactly what I did. I got a degree in biology and chemistry with a minor in math. And as I said, we could really not find jobs in that corner of North Dakota when we graduated. So we moved to Arizona, and I taught math for 6 years. But one of the rules in Arizona at that time was that all educators had to obtain their master's degree within 5 years. So we were in Yuma, Arizona, which, if you're not familiar with the layout of Arizona, it is so far south that you go north to get into California. So it sits on the California border, and there was a satellite campus of Northern Arizona University in Yuma, and they offered a variety of master's programs. And I knew I had always kind of had my eye on counseling, but after finishing my undergrad, I felt like I just needed a little time to get in and experience teaching, and it was great timing. So I started taking courses thinking, I think counseling is what I want to do. And literally by the end of my first semester, it was a foregone conclusion. I ended up with a professor who was just transformative for me. and hooked me in. And I thought, no, I knew I was close with teaching, but I absolutely hit the bullseye with counseling. So finished my master's degree and never actually got to be a counselor in Arizona. We moved to Indiana, and that's where I started my counseling role. So it was kind of predestined. It was awesome that journey took me that route. So I've always been in education, but definitely the sweet spot for me is counseling.
Love at first sight for both of you guys, right? Great. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to ask, you both got nominated by someone, and I don't know, you may know who that was, you may not. Connie says no. Julie may know at this point after it happened. Maybe you found out, right? What about your program, at least to your knowledge, what about your program made that person nominate you for this award? So Julie, you want to start?
It's kind of a surreal. I feel like I have a little bit of imposter syndrome on the whole thing here, because I'm really doing what so many other counselors are already doing. And so, just, I guess, spreading the word about the nominations process and everything is as important as everything, because there's so many people doing great work. But I know in the nomination letter, from what I understand, it was my assistant principal who had submitted my nomination, and she focused on, just kind of leadership in the building, and then really looking at some of the ways that I work to connect students with resources and their families as well. I started a food pantry in our school. It's expanded to involve hygiene products that we have, posted throughout the school for kids with needs there. We take care of gifts at the holidays for families, food assistance really throughout the year. So I know that was kind of a core centerpiece of the nomination. And then just the ways that I work to advocate for the students within a system with, that's small school, limited resources, how can I better create opportunities for my students?
Students are at the center of it all, right? So that's great. Thank you. Connie, I'm going to kick it to you to answer that question.
We kind of joked that I was nominated in the pandemic. So we thought maybe there had been crossed wires and I was the only name that popped up. We laughed about that, but because back to what Julie said, I really have struggled at points with this, that I think, I don't know that I'm doing anything that special. I think I look around and I see just outstanding counseling, not just in my building, but in my district. And when I go to DOGS meeting, the directors of guidance programs in Marion County, I hear things that just leave me in awe of what people are doing. So I'm not sure. I can only guess what prompted that nomination. What I would tell you is that I feel like I've never met a program I don't like. So, if there is something that I think, ooh, I see an opportunity, that we have a demographic that would be a great place to implement, or let's try this. I tend to be really optimistic. Yep, that sounds like a long, challenging, let's dig in. Let's figure out how we can do that. And then, of course, again, there are just so many things that come through our world. And sometimes, we kind of become the clearinghouse for a lot of different programs. And I think that gives me an opportunity to be involved with a lot of different people and a lot of different community resources and programs. And so I think, again, it's just conjecture, but I think it's just that kind of what Julie said, that we have that opportunity to really see where needs are and step in. And somebody saw that and thought that was important and maybe wanted to recognize that.
Great. Thank you both. Next question. Collaboration. So yesterday's Ask a Challenge was about collaboration with teachers. Today's is what? Community. Counselors are better together with community. So I'm going to ask, just, I guess, generally speaking, collaboration. Tell us maybe a little bit about how you collaborate with, and really you could pick If you want to talk about focus on teachers, how do you collaborate with teachers? What are some maybe unique things or special things that you do to partner with them? Or if you'd rather focus on community, or you can tell us both, if you can answer both. So Julie, in what ways do you collaborate? And I believe you actually answered the question for us for the ASCA. I'll pull that up just as you talk too.
Yeah. Oh, so this is the community one. I think just, they always say it takes a village, and it really does. And so the more we can utilize our families and our community members, our employers, our places of worship, those are people who can support our students after 3 o'clock. We can't do everything in the 7 short hours that we have these students around us. We can connect them, but it's really having those connections outside of our building that leads them to greater opportunities for success. So I think that's so critical. The teacher piece, I mean, we would not have a comprehensive school counseling program without our teachers. We've talked about caseloads, we've talked about numbers, and even though Connie and I are both have smaller caseloads because of department chairs and all of those things, I still never feel like I have enough time with the students that I serve. And so having our teachers really as an extension of our program is critical. So working with them for that buy-in. For us, we don't have a set, a purchased curriculum. We've kind of developed our own curriculum, and our teachers do a lot of delivery of that. Some of them that are a little bit less of a comfort zone for them, we'll record them and push them out. But we really look to our teachers to help us with delivery of a lot of those things. They help have those conversations in their classes with their students, and then just knowing that they are our first gatekeepers of our program and of students who are struggling with things. That's where we're going to hear when a student is struggling and when a student is in need of a support that we can provide, and we couldn't do it without that.
Yeah, 100%. And I know you talked a little bit ago about your work with the food bank and providing food. So I'm sure, that's just one, I'm sure, of many ways in which you collaborate with community through offering that service to your community and your families in your community. Connie, what about you? Do you want to talk a little bit about collaboration and what that looks like for you?
Absolutely. I think school counselors really sit in this beautiful position to really be a conduit between community, teachers, administration. Sometimes I think we're very disarming for a parent phone call, that we're the phone call, something happened, my kid's worried about a grade, we've had an issue at home. That's a really important position, that we become oftentimes that first voice of connection, support, ability to provide resources. And I think just the importance around that, not just with our families, but with our community members, with our community partners. We sit in this corner of Northeast Indianapolis, and one of the pushes we all have is to try and get students more involved in internship opportunities, employment opportunities, getting out into the community. Well, we definitely need to make sure that we nurture those partnerships. And oftentimes we are part of that team, not saying we do that alone, but we are definitely part of that team. I sat over in a meeting with the advisory board for our McKenzie Center for Innovation and Technology, where we pull in all of the partners from business and industry who serve as advisors for our culinary arts, our auto service, engineering, cosmetology, all of that. And it is, sometimes I'm just shocked at how we don't do more of that, because the conversations are so eye-opening for our community members, that it just blows me away every time we sit down and have these really substantive conversations that help bring the community together. I always think it's fascinating that people are quick to say, those schools, but not my school. Those teachers, but not my teachers. And I think counselors serve a really important role, that we often can connect up teachers, parents, facilitate conversations certainly to improve education for everybody. Going back to something Julie said with the collaboration with teachers, without question, I know we ask our teachers sometimes to step into a role that might be a little bit uncomfortable, that I know because I've had a couple of them say like, counseling's like, that's not my area. I'm not asking you to be a counselor, but would you just be that human in the front of the classroom, just be real while you deliver this information? We do something the first Wednesday of every month. We have a college and career readiness day, and we plug that into our lunch block. It's 30 minutes longer. We ask the teachers that block to please present information, and we don't have them wing it. We always send them something that we'd like them to share. But it's really interesting to see through that process over the last several years. Every year a teacher will come to me and say, I'm really kind of interested in counseling. What do you think? What kind of programs are out there, and how do you think? And I think there are lots of natural counseling personalities and types among the educators out there. And I love the possibility of creating that pipeline and giving them opportunities to kind of put a foot in that role. We call it Lattice for instead of MTSS, but we use a lattice structure where we've had a lot of teachers be able to step into a role, really sort of in a mentoring, supervisory, a connection, a place where students can connect that seems less official. And it's another person to have a relationship with a student, somebody else to check on them, that they're here, that they need anything. And again, it's all of these different pieces and parts and programs, I think, that at the core have a counseling foundation, have a school counseling vision in them. And we know we're all probably in agreement. I think school counselors are like the most important piece in schools, not because we're more important, but because we really are the conduit between among so many different connections.
Yeah. Gosh, the just hearing you both talk is just like the number of hats, you're just involved, everything. The counselor is like in everything. In the school, everything happening in the school, everything happening in the community, you are a part of that. And in many cases, you're a leader in all that's happening. So it's just really amazing. It's truly amazing the work, the amount of hats that counselors play in the buildings with students and parents and community and teachers and everybody. You're the connection, right? Okay, let's move on to talk a little bit about advocacy. So tell me a little bit about advocacy, and it could be how do you advocate for the profession? In what ways do you do that? And then also maybe giving people on the call some ideas for how they could be a great advocate for the profession. And then also, if you'd like to speak a little bit, I know a lot of what you've said is all about student advocacy, and everything you do is for students. But if you want to say anything more about being an advocate for students as well, you could add that on too. So Julie, you want to share a little bit about how you advocate?
Sure. And I think advocacy can look different really for everyone, but there is a role in advocacy for everyone as well. So at the building level, I think, especially looking at our data is so critical, and using that data as a tool to inform our practices, and then create advocacy opportunities with our administrators, our school boards, our local communities. This is what we're seeing in our students. This is what we need to see in our students, and this is how we envision getting there. So one of the opportunities that happened, as a result of the pandemic is we got all these ESSER funds in our buildings and through the CARES Act. So in my building, it was, okay, we need more school counselors. We need more mental health professionals. So in our corporation, we went from 3 high school counselors to now we have three junior senior high counselors, 2 elementary school counselors, and a social worker. And it's going to be huge for our ability to meet the needs of our students. And then I think there's always opportunities in the community just to make people aware of what's happening in your buildings and what you need. And then when things are happening down at the State House, it's very, some people view advocacy a little like dental work. It's like, I don't want to go and have a conversation with my legislator. It's even a little intimidating to send an email or make a phone call. But it's so important because our silence is complacence, and our silence allows things to happen that aren't always best for our students. So, for me, I've testified, I've had meetings, I've tried to step into that role, and I know that it's not a comfort zone for everybody. So, where is your comfort zone, and how can you still continue to advocate for students and for your program while attending to your own personal fit and passion? So, I think for the most part, I would say that's our most critical, and just finding opportunities to have conversations, creating opportunities to have conversations. There are so many people out there who don't even really understand the school counselor role. So many folks out there who still think that we're guidance counselors. So explaining those things in a caring and compassionate, respectful way to help guiding them, like this is where we can go, and we want you to help us get there.
Great, thank you. And I know, speaking to the legislative piece, that can be very intimidating to many. ISCA has done a great job, I think, with kind of leading, the path for advocacy at the State House. They've arranged, in the past, they've arranged the days on the Hill where they've all gone down and talked to different legislators. I know, is it Andrew? Yeah, he's the current ISCA legislative kind of liaison, and they just sent something through Counselor Talk. So if anybody wants more information on what's happening right now, visit that email from him, and you'll get a good little summary from ISCA. So that was really great. Connie, what about you? Can you talk about advocacy a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. I think advocacy and education have an intersection for us frequently, that I feel like we spend a good deal of time educating current trends, changes in expectations. I think about when we have meetings in the fall with our new senior class every year and their parents, each year that we have to start with education around all of the information we've learned, we've had through conversations with colleges and industry and our community connections. We really do sit in a position where we have that opportunity to help grow and educate our entire school community. That oftentimes then translates into advocacy in a lot of different ways. Let's get rid of some of the misinformation, and we can do that a lot of times through our advocacy. I think about, Julie did a great job talking about that student advocacy. I want to talk about school counselor advocacy. I think school counselors are one of the biggest faults we have, and I'm raising my hand highest. We do not proudly proclaim all of the amazing things we do. It's not our nature. We're quiet about it. We have all come through professional programs where confidentiality is an absolute hallmark of everything we do. So there are so many times that we do these incredible things that are transformative with students and families and community, and we really don't say anything about it because it's just not the way we do things. And sometimes I think that's a detriment to us, because there are, with lack of information or noise or input, that people assume maybe we're not doing things, or what's their role, what are they doing? School counselors are awesome, and the things that we do and handle and accomplish and facilitate every day, that's kind of my personal challenge. I try to push out as much information as I can to highlight the counselors in our department and in our district, because they're incredible, and the work they do is just truly, I'm not trying to be dramatic, it's transformative, and we know it's life-saving at points. And we need to make sure that we are sharing how important that is. Which brings me to the advocacy for our profession. I am a huge proponent of graduation pathways. I love getting away from testing requirements. If you're a great tester, super, if there's still an option for you in grad pathways. I love the opportunity for kids to explore, for kids to take personalized pathways. Love it. The elephant in the room that needs to continue to make noise is how much time and energy that this puts back on school counselors for tracking purposes. That there is so much demand of our time for, we've always checked transcripts. That's part of it, but it's bigger than that. And the ramifications of that really come home to roost over the last 2 years when we've seen this incredible increase in mental health needs. And I'll tell you where I fall on that every day. The grad pathway information is going to be secondary to anything that, walks into my office requiring immediate care. So again, I don't think we make enough noise. I don't think we are as vocal as we need to be about what the changes to pathways, what that burdens counseling departments with, without necessarily the support in place, the plan in place. And I haven't even talked about the fact that right now we have 4 different programs in operation. We've got iStep, we've got Perkins 5, we've got Perkins 4, we've got next level programs of study. So I think, literally there are days that I think, okay, wait a minute, who's on first? What's on second? Wait, what year are you in? Hang on, let me make sure I've got the right program.
Yeah.
But I think, I think the intention is probably good, and trying to get to where we need to be. Counselors need to be heard. Counselors need to be invited to the table. Counselors are the ones on the front lines in all of these situations. And it was kind of coincidental last year when I received the award. I got invited to be part of a kind of a think tank session. And at the end of it, the person who coordinated it said, "Oh my gosh, this was so informative. Wow, you shared so many things." And I thought, can you imagine what life would be like if you had our voices at the table in all of these conversations? So I just think we need to continue to advocate for counselor voice, for counselor insight and experience. Holy smokes, we have so much to contribute in a really unique position. We're not teachers, we're not administrators. We take up a different lane, and I think that lane is just vitally important to be part of all of the conversations going on.
100%. Yes. Great information. That was helpful, not only for how you advocate, but you also kind of shared along the way of how can others get involved? How can other counselors advocate for this profession and students? Again, that seems to be at the center, I think, of every school counselor's program, and everything they do. They're always thinking about how we can advocate for our students. So I'm going to ask anybody in the audience have any questions. If anybody wants to unmute, please feel free to do that, or you can drop a question in the chat. Otherwise, I'll give you a second here to see if we do get any questions.
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Go ahead. Yep.
Hi, this is Laura at South Newton. I guess I'll
Hi, Laura.
so you can see me. Hello.
There you are. Hello.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry, I had a kid in here at the start, so you guys were muted for a while. Just want to say thanks. I couldn't agree more with everything you guys say and all you do. I'm at a small rural school, so it's really, it's just me doing all the things, wearing all the hats. And so, Connie, when you were talking about like all the grad pathways and the change in that, and then the Perkins 4, Perkins 5, and LPS, and all the things you have to track, it's just very tough. And so it's refreshing to hear this, because some days you leave your office and you think, can I do this another day? So hearing it from, the advocacy that we need to do, I think is refreshing to hear the importance of that. So I think that's definitely something I need to do a better job at. So I appreciate giving me more faith in that, I guess. So that's it. I just wanted to say thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks, Laura. So important. Yeah, it's something that kind of gets sometimes put on the back burner because there's so many other things that are, seem more important at the time. So definitely an important piece, though, to keep that in mind for everything that we do. And I know one of our Counselor Award recipients from earlier this week shared that she shares everything on Twitter. And through that, by doing that, she's had Asker reach out to her and ask her to, I think, write an article or do an interview. And other people have really taken to that, her Twitter account. And she said well, not everything, but a lot of what I do, I've learned through Twitter. I've seen other people talk about different program elements that I think, oh man, that looks amazing. I'm going to try that in my building. So even that piece of putting it out there on social media, the awesome things that are happening, the more people see that, and the more people maybe understand a little bit of the great work that counselors do. So I liked that she shared that earlier this week as well. Let me see. I'm going to ask you maybe one other question, and then I'll open it up again to audience, or I'll ask Julie or Connie if there's anything else they want to share. But I'm going to ask about joy in your profession. What do you do to kind of maintain that level of joy working as a school counselor? Are there certain things that bring you joy? Julie, you want to start?
And I think, Lori even touched on it. Some days it's just like, do I want to keep going? And so it is so important to figure out ways to fill our cup, also to fill our colleagues' cups. So a couple of things that I do. I think a lot of us have that little box or that little file of notes or cards or things that we've gotten from students along the way, that you just have to get in the habit of going back to that when it's you're having those rough moments, and just, kind of like the old starfish story. I made a difference to that one. I made a difference to that one. I made a difference to that one, and really allow yourself to keep going through all of that. I get tremendous joy and energy from some of my colleagues when the pandemic hit. And we realized we weren't going to have a national conference in person. We started meeting virtually. We started with a game night, and then we said, you know what, we're going to start doing some PD together. We're on our 6th book. So I, do a book study every week I've got counselors. I think there's like 12 states worth of us that jump on Zoom every week. And we just keep learning from each other and try to keep growing, because there truly is always that. There's so much more to learn. Like you were referring to too, it's kind of my social media, like, okay, what are you doing that's working? What things are happening for you? Sometimes it's commiserating, like, okay, yeah, this piece of legislation is going through my state too. So just sharing those ideas and getting energy from other colleagues in the field is so important.
Absolutely. Connie?
I have like so many things going through my head right now. I'm like, how long can we keep going?
Yeah.
So I'll focus on the joy to start with. Literally, when you asked the question, I immediately teared up, because I have, we all love our students. We have amazing students. Last night, I'm sitting at home. I was here late last night for a program. And when I got home, it was a little after 8. And as soon as I walked in the door, because I don't have cell service at school, that's a bonus, being in the middle, we're in construction, and I have no cell service. So when I walk out, it's like being electrocuted as my phone lights up. So I got home and I had a message from one of my seniors, and it was in all caps, and it was just oozing joy, because he's amazing. He started this TikTok during the pandemic when we were all home. And he was looking for, I think, a push or it was an AP class that he wanted assistance with. So he said, I started going out and looking at YouTube stuff, and I'm like, you know what, I could do this. Well, long story short, last night he texted me to say, oh my gosh, I started making these little 30-second videos, and I've posted them, and I'm now up to 4.1 million likes. I said, holy smoke. And this is something that has been just amazing for him. It's been a way for him to share his voice and his personality. And he's not like, you would not notice him in the hallway. He would be a kid that would kind of mind his business and move along. And this has been just like, I feel so honored to get to see him blossom, to get to see him kind of find a niche that really allows him to be fulfilled and show his talents. And it's amazing. I mean, like, I said to him, okay, we need to do some TikTok videos. You need to give me a tutorial. We need to figure out how to do this. And he's like, let's do it. Let's come up with some videos. But my point is, like, he is one story out of the thousands of kids. And it doesn't need to be, oh my gosh, look how amazing you are. You have 4.1 million likes. And it can be the kid who, you know, we know is coming from a really, really difficult situation. And you're the person that student has trusted when they've been disappointed or have been fearful to reach out to others. And something about you has encouraged that student to have the confidence to speak up. That's incredibly humbling. And I don't know if that's, I mean, yes, that's joy. I mean, that's very rewarding that you think, okay, I'm in the right spot for the right reason. I think that's huge. And those are the stories that, without question, you know, I kind of file away and we'll start talking about kids and you immediately have a smile on your face because it flashes you back to a recollection of somebody. And I'm telling you, that was my big thing when we did all of our interviews. This is literally like the best job. I just cannot believe that I get paid to do this sometimes. I'm like, wow, I get to sit in this really awesome position. But I think, you know, one of the things that Laura said too, I think that community is so incredibly important. And I have never had the experience of being the only counselor in a building. And I am very grateful for having people at arm's length when I've had a really difficult situation with a student or a parent screaming about something that I feel like I don't know how to help. I don't know how, you know, whatever it happens to be, that I can walk next door and say, help me walk through this. You know, having that close. Really fortunate that, and Molly from Ben Davis, we have a network in Marion County. We call it the DOGS, the Directors of Guidance. And all of the directors get together about 3 times a year. And I look so forward to that because it's in that conversation that I realize what we're struggling with is not in isolation. That, you know, whatever the topic is, I-step makeups or attendance or mental health concerns over pandemic, whatever it is, we're not alone in that. And the wisdom in that group and the creativity, and it's so amazing. It's fulfilling. It's encouraging. And it encourages me to keep going on those days that I'm like, I swear to goodness, if they give us one more different pathway opportunity here, that's it. But you know, I think the joy is, it's there. And I know we need to see it. We need to look for it. Some days I don't need to look hard at all. It is in my face. And other days, the last few weeks, I just got back from the ASCA celebration in DC. And when I went to the very first reception the evening, I kind of felt like Miss America because everybody's like, oh, you're Oklahoma. Oh, you're Maryland. So it was kind of like, I'm Indiana 2022. But it kind of caught me off guard at one point. I was standing with 2 women from Oklahoma and they said, oh, Indiana, what is going on with your legislation? And she said, I always thought of Indiana as being kind of progressive with education. And it was this odd thing that I felt like, ooh, I thought maybe that was our dirty secret, you know, that nobody else knew about that.
Yeah.
And when she brought it up, we had this great conversation. And the upside was we talked about how awesome ISCA is and how we are, you know, Gold Star schools are a focus and that we look for quality programming in counseling and that, you know, we certainly will be impacted by this. So we need to use that same model that we've used for counseling to really infiltrate that, that section of people that maybe don't understand what's going on with teaching and feeling the need to put these other pieces in place. But I just think there's joy out there. It happens. We know it happens every day. We know counselors are some of the funniest people on the planet, you know, that you have to be. We have to laugh because we carry some of the heaviest human toll at points. Have to be really good at being able to let things go and not hold on to them personally. I worked with a woman for years, and she told me something one time that I've never forgotten. In every class I've ever taught, I've shared it with them. And she talked about, the necessity of making sure that those two worlds didn't negatively impact the other, your work world, your personal world. And she said, every day I drive to school, I drive by a McDonald's at Fall Creek and 79th. And it's about midway between home and school. And she said, when I drive to school in the morning, when I get there, I start thinking about all of the things that I need to do for school and the things that I left yesterday that I need to follow up with, and just really getting prepped for my day. And I pick everything up when I drive through there because I left it there the day before. When I drove home, I went through that intersection and said, it stays here because I've done everything I can do. And I need to now go home and be everything I need to be with my family. And that has always stayed with me, and how important that is, because I think that's something that we do. We are part of some really difficult situations, and we're empathetic people. So it's sometimes it's hard to let that go. But I think without question, there's joy in so many different aspects and elements of what we do. And boy, I sure appreciate my colleagues in my building, in my profession, and just the laughter and camaraderie that we have. And by the way, my takeaway, and I see Jess on here too, my takeaway, I got back from the conference and I quickly texted Bridget Helms and I said, oh my gosh, I need to get more involved with ISCA stuff. I was so inspired by all of the ASCA conversations and the people and the speakers and the events. It was just, I've never been prouder to be a school counselor, and wanted to make sure that I continue to inject that into the people I work with. And if I can contribute in any bigger way, like that's what I wanted to do coming home.
That's great. Thank you for that. Love the McDonald's story. That is so important, especially right now we know how important self-care is, especially now. So really, I appreciate that, that story that you shared. I just pulled up too. Another thing that you both touched on is the importance of colleagues, meeting with, talking with, networking with other school counselors. If you don't have any in your building that you can collaborate with, if you are a much smaller school, make sure that you are plugged in other ways so that you can have that relationship and that collaboration, because it is so important to be able to bounce ideas off of somebody else who shares the same role. If you have a question, if you're not sure if you handled something correctly, that is so critical. And whether that be through maybe getting involved with ISCA, you'll meet lots of great counselors through ISCA. There are all kinds of ways that you could tap into other counselors. Connie mentioned the dogs. I used to attend those meetings when I worked at the Department of Ed and loved attending those meetings. But that's something that anybody across the state, you could start something similar in your own region. Pull together some of your local districts to have all the counselors come together, once a semester even, just to kind of have that opportunity to connect. So thank you for sharing that. I just pulled up your quote here. I think, Connie, did you fill this one in, or was this Julie?
That must be Julie. I didn't submit that.
Okay, great. So this is actually Friday's Ask a Photo Challenge. But since we are not having a chat tomorrow, I wanted to share this as well. So this was, school counselors are better together because, and Julie filled in the blank. Julie, do you want to say anything about this? Anything more than what's written?
I think that everybody has such amazing gifts in this profession. And so finding ways to really share those gifts with one another. We've all developed by looking to those with more experience. But I find, even, I guess, as a veteran counselor, I won't say old, even as a veteran in the field, I am still always learning from our new counselors who are coming into the profession. And I think that that's a really important voice. And I remember being a new counselor in the profession, thinking that I didn't have those things to contribute. And so I really hope that if we've got particularly newer counselors with us today or listening, that you do have lots of things to contribute, and that energy and new ideas, keep all of us fresh, keep our profession moving forward. And I think, just gratitude for that is so important. I can think of, so many people along my journey that have impacted my professional growth.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're right. So right on. New counselors do on their website, the National School Counseling site, with all of their resources. They have these each day. There's a kind of a quote where you can fill it in, take your picture with it, and then post it to your social media accounts. So get involved, do this. If you want to share a little bit about what you think is important in this with school counseling, this is a great way to participate this week in that. And then here are all the days for the photo challenge. So just wanted to put that out there for you. We answered the Thursday and Friday questions, so you were able to see examples of what was written there. And then finally, we're going to kind of wrap it up. So I'm going to open it up for anybody who might have questions. Also, Connie, Julie, if there's anything else that you want to share that we didn't get to, or I didn't specifically ask you something that you want to share, please feel free to do that as well.
And I'll jump in with something that we've talked about in a variety of different ways. And social media is something that has really become one of my focal points in the last probably 4 or 5 years. And just this last year, I got access to our school Instagram account. So back in 2010, when I came, I asked about getting a Facebook account, and that was so revolutionary. Oh my gosh, that was crazy. And I laugh about it now because I think, oh, wow. But it was a big deal, and we had to get a lot of permissions, and we had to move heaven and earth to be able to have a school Facebook page. So obviously we know what has happened with social media. But one of the things that I think is just so incredibly powerful is that we have several different people attached to our social media accounts. And the cool thing about that is what's important to me, I'm going to post. So I do not hesitate to post information about self-care, mental health realities, struggles with a rough day. Here are strategies. A lot of different things that are of particular interest to me, in addition to, hey, look at this, our girls swim team did this incredible thing and, had an undefeated season. Absolutely, all of that. And what we have seen initially, especially with the pandemic impact, where we had all of the students home, and as we were on kind of a hybrid schedule last year where some students never came in the building, but others came 2 days a week and were virtual the other 3. And there was this hostility sounds too hard, but it was definitely a pushback. We started sending out surveys, let us know where you are. What can we do? What can we help with? Where are you struggling? And knew we would have a group of students that we had already identified, that maybe housing insecurity, food insecurity. We had our food pantry working on getting food to families, put together money to make sure that utilities weren't turned off. I mean, we did everything we could think of community resource wise. So we were prepared for those who already have barriers in the community. The group that surprised us were those students who are kind of the high flyer, school proof kids who, just seem to be able to do their thing, and whether we're here or not. And what we found was losing school was a huge knock out of their identity. It caused this kind of an identity crisis, that who am I? I'm clearly I'm not going to school like I normally was. The routines, the interactions, the feedback I get from that part of my life has changed so dramatically. And we saw this huge spike in student needs of mental health support, just a variety of different things that we knew were out there, but the magnitude of it was a little I'll be honest, I did a beta test with my kids because I thought, let's figure out how this works. I sent it out to my kids and I was pretty confident of what I would get back. And when I got my responses back, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to prepare our counselors, because when we send this out school wide, it felt like a tidal wave. And I immediately felt like I was completely incapable of meeting the needs of what was pushed back out in all of that data. It was overwhelming. And we know that a lot of our kids are on social media. Again, I already told you I'm not a real TikToker. We'll figure that part out. But we knew the bulk of our kids were on Instagram, so asked to have access to that account. And we're able to start posting things that are going to touch that. Let's talk about it. One of my big pushes is to destigmatize mental health issues. You know, let's have conversations around it, normalize it. And I know that's all of us are pushing for that. And initially, when we started pushing that out, there was some interesting pushback, anger. Where have you been? Why have you not? Oh, all of a sudden you care about us. You know, those sorts of initial reactions. And, you know, I think human tendency is to pull away from that, like, oh, touching a hot stove. And instead we just stayed engaged and said, I think that's going to be that test of a teenager. Like, are you really here? Do you really care?
Yeah.
Or is this just going to be a temporary, you're going to post a couple of things and say, hey, we're taking care of mental health and move on. So it resulted in the establishment of a BC2M group in our school. And I will tell you what, they are the most incredible group of individuals. I am absolutely in awe of these students. I just I get emotional talking about it. They are incredible. And they are mental health advocates for everybody in this building. They're incredible. And that all started from our push at getting out into social media, trying to get to them where they were when they were really isolated. And it has really translated to much more conversation. In no way do I say we've got it all figured out, but I feel like we've opened some pathways that were previously not there. And I think that's how we move forward. And that's how we really do destigmatize a lot of our mental health conversations and reluctance to seek help. So that social media piece is a big one for me. It's going to continue to be something we push at in our world and try to use it for good, not evil.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And yeah, social media can be such a beast, right? But at the same time, it is such an easy way to connect to all of your families, your community. I mean, most people are on a social media channel. I mean, almost everybody, probably, right? Facebook or Instagram, or now Twitter's coming, TikTok. So what a great way to communicate to your families. Thanks for sharing that. Julie, did you have anything to add before I close this session?
Sure. I mean, I would just say that, you know, right now, I think educators as a whole are starting to really carry a weight. And like I've told some people that the pandemic has exacerbated that. Educators have been working all summer. And so there's never really been a summer break for 2 years. And we're not coming back to our buildings feeling refreshed and ready to go in August. We've already got an overwhelming to-do list, and it is really easy to feel burdened, to feel overwhelmed. If anybody else is reading Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, there are days I want to say I'm blown. Yeah. So, but I think we have to kind of dig back into ourselves and really find our why. Why are we here? Why is this important to us? And let that drive us to start somewhere. If we start looking at everything that needs to be done, we'll just, we'll dig ourselves into a hole. But we've got to pick that one thing, find your passion. There is so much work to be done in the mental health space. There is so much work to be done around diversity and social justice. There's no shortage of topics that we need to dig deeper. And so just giving ourselves permission to find one thing and start there, I think is so important. That's how we can become a change agent. It's not by, throwing a dart at 20 different balloons. it's picking that bullseye and going after it.
That's great. Thank you both so much. What a great conversation. Gosh, you had so much great information to share and tips for advocacy and ways to advocate and promote your programs. And I really appreciate your time. Congratulations again for receiving the awards from ISCA. That's awesome. Speaking of ISCA awards, they did just post the nomination forms for next year's awards. So be sure to nominate somebody, anybody who you think is an awesome counselor and really deserves this recognition. Please take a minute to fill out that nomination form, and those are due May 22nd. Finally, we do have a session evaluation for today. So if anybody wants to complete that, that always helps us really know what to plan for upcoming professional learning opportunities. Additionally, if you want a PGP point for attending the session today, this is your way to get that. So if you fill it out, you'll automatically receive that PGP point. This was recorded today, so we will put it on demand in just a few days. So for those who weren't able to access it live, or if you want to rewatch anything again, it will be available for you to do that. Finally, we have some upcoming events I wanted to share here. I will be sending you these slides, so you will have access to all of this information, especially for these last few slides where we kind of went pretty quickly through them, but you'll have access to all of the links and everything within the slides as well. With that, here's our contact information, and I am going to close the session. Again, thank you so much, Julie and Connie, for being with us, and thank you for everybody else who joined us. Have a great rest of your day and a great end to your National School Counseling Week. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks,
Thank you.
Julie.
I love listening to you, Connie.
Likewise.